You might think personal brands are just for viral TikTokers, Instagram influencers, or famous athletes, but that couldn't be further from the truth. All professionals can benefit from having a personal brand. My name is Dr. Bailey Benedict, and I'm going to talk to you today about establishing your personal brand. Simply put, your personal brand is who you are. Your personal brand is an intentional, strategic practice where you define and express your own value proposition. Value propositions are what something brings to the table, how they add value. Your personal brand is related to who you are, what you do, and what makes you different. What makes you you? Personal branding is basically just marketing yourself. Your personal brand can help you reach out to stakeholders and build long-term, mutually beneficial relationships. Knowing your personal brand can help you approach work tasks, knowing how they build or detract from your brand. It can also help you determine how to best work within your organizations and how to understand and advocate for your own advancement. With our personal brand, we want to be authentic and consistent. Personal branding online can be difficult, especially during life changes or when managing multiple audiences. We want to be considering the future audience, which is our unknown audience or our unanticipated audiences. And consider having an always on the job mentality in that anyone at any time could see us online or in person and think we could make a good addition to their workplace or their team. We also want to balance demonstrating competence and building relationships and make sure to assess and adapt our brand over time. The brand you have now wasn't the brand that you had when you first entered the workplace and won't be the brand you have in 5 years. Coming up with your personal brand isn't easy. It will take a lot of critical self-reflection, thinking back on your previous life experiences, and thinking about how you complete tasks and engage with others on the day-to-day. But I promise you, it'll be worth it. I encourage you to start by asking yourself a bunch of questions. Start with, what qualities do you have? How do you think, behave, and interact with other people? What employment experiences do you have? What extracurriculars do you have? Volunteer experiences, personal life experiences. And then go on to your skills. We talked about adaptive skills, transferable skills, and job-related skills. What do you have? Then evaluate, what do you know? What coursework have you taken? What knowledge have you gained on the job? What knowledge has been passed down to you from generation to generation? You could also even consider what hobbies you might have. What are some of the things that you enjoy in life? What makes you smile? What makes you happy? And then what superpowers do you have? Is there anything that you do exceptionally well? Something that you're known for among your coworkers or your family and friends? And then finally, what accomplishments do you have? Do you have any big awards that you've been given? Do you have any major life goals that you've achieved or any work goals that you've achieved? What are those things that you check off your bucket list that make you stand out? I also encourage you to go a little deeper and ask yourself, what stories do you have? What are your meaningful life events? What are those turning points that really stand out to you? What are your passions? What things bring you joy, give you energy, light you up? What values do you have? What are your operating principles? Those non-negotiables that guide your life, all of the decisions that you make and the trajectory of your relationships and your time spent on this earth. What goals do you have? What goals do you have in the short term, the midterm, and the long term? What goals do you have in the next 3 months versus the next 3 years versus the next 30 years? And finally, what purposes do you have in your life? Why are you here on this earth? What it really comes down to is what makes you unique. What are all those little characteristics about you that make you who you are? Once you've done that critical self-reflection, I encourage you to identify yourself with trait nouns. Take those values, those qualities, those skills, pieces of knowledge, stories, purposes that you have, and connect them to nouns. Connect them to words that describe who you are, that are more than just student or more than just employee. Are you an innovator, a leader, an organizer, a strategist, a collaborator, a planner? These words are going to really help you start to sell yourself as having a certain identity and having a certain character about you in the workplace. On a practical level, you can start making a list of things. Grab a piece of paper and jot down as much as you can think about yourself. It's sometimes easy to start with your skills, those adaptive skills or qualities about yourself. your transferable skills, those ing words, the things that you do across a lot of contexts, and then your job-related skills. What is that skill set that you've honed in your field or your industry or your position? Once you've got these lists of things, then the thinking really begins. That's when we have to start piecing this mess of qualities together to create a coherent narrative about who you are. Here's where we want to start looking for consistent themes across the things in the last few slides. If you're really struggling to come up with things on the last few slides, ask your family members and friends how they see you. Reflect on how you've been described in your performance reviews. You could even assess who your audience will be and think about what they might see in you. Consider what makes you stand out and how you are remembered by people. Then look for those connections between the things across the last slides, across the things that you can come up with. Here's an example of what my 3 themes are. As a professor, we need to do research. So with regard to my research, I position myself as having familiarity with several methods. If someone can come to me with a research question, I can help them come up with a method for how to analyze that question, get data, and then analyze the data. I also argue that I take a student-centered approach to my instruction. I give practical takeaways from each course, am adaptable to the needs of students, and provide professional development opportunities like I got as a student. Finally, my last theme is that I'm kind. I tell a story about coordinating Administrative Professionals Day. I say hello to people in the building and try to build a friendly, supportive culture. And my favorite feedback to get from students is that Dr. B really cares about us, because I truly do. So I see myself as knowing lots of methods, being student-centered in my instruction, and being kind. That's what makes me me as an employee. It's time to start writing up your personal brand. You mentioned that you are friendly, open-minded, reliable, had 4 years of experience working on a marketing team, and value strong relationships. Does that make you a collaborator, maybe? What kind of collaborator are you? Let's jump into it. Eventually, you'll need to start stringing the pieces of your brand together. You can do them in statements kind of like a Mad Lib, where you fill in a word into a structure that already exists. Here's an example of a structure you could use. I am a blank with blank years of experience looking to do blank. I am a trustworthy accountant with 5 years of bookkeeping experience looking to help nonprofits stay financially responsible. We can take it even further. I am a blank leader committed to blank by doing blank and by leveraging blank. I am an assertive yet compassionate leader committed to building productive and diverse teams by collaborating across organizations and leveraging my skills in negotiation and project management. We can take it even further and elaborate our personal brand to connect it to our organizational goals or the goals of the place that we want to work. So we could say, I'm a patient and observant counseling professional committed to supporting student success by providing a safe space for growth. My clinical social worker license and experience as a K-12 counselor allow me to provide reliable interventions for a wide range of mental health concerns. I care about all facets of students' well-being and aim to join an organization where I can contribute to the upward mobility of minority families in the Inland Empire. Does that sound like you want to be a counselor at CSUSB? When you're on the job market for professor positions, you have to write all sorts of statements that address different elements of your personal brand. Here are some of my thesis statements from those personal statements that we have to write. For example, in my research summary, I say I'm a social scientist proficient in network, quantitative, and qualitative methods whose research centers on how individuals and communities organize social networks to manage uncertainty and enact resilience. For my teaching philosophy, I say my teaching philosophy is rooted in fostering learning by creating spaces for growth while recognizing the real threat of mental health crises on college campuses. Consequently, my pedagogy revolves around valuing transparency, cultivating comfort, and reducing uncertainty. For my teaching effectiveness statement, I say I am inclusive, constantly growing and evolving, adaptive to changing circumstances, and kind. Finally, for my service contribution, I say I consider myself a servant leader and a devoted mentor who aims to build and sustain communities on campus. Last but not least, I want you to remember that your full name is part of your personal brand. I imagine that many of us have common first names. So we need to make sure to introduce ourselves using our first and last name. Not everyone is going to know how to pronounce your name or remember your name. And so we can take the awkwardness out of the situation by always just introducing ourselves with the first and last name. You might also consider, do you want to be called something else? For example, you might say, my name is William Bowery, but people call me Bill. Would you want to state your pronouns? You could say, my name is Bailey Benedict. I use she, her pronouns. And another thing is, if your name is difficult to pronounce, you can help people pronounce your name better by making it a little bit easier on them. So I once introduced myself to someone and he said, my name is Druce. It's like Bruce, but with a D. And that made it really easy for me to be able to pronounce his name, Druce, like Bruce with a D. Once you have your personal brand established, then we want to start communicating our personal brand consistently across different contexts. This personal brand is now how you're going to bring yourself into interactions and into tasks across your workplace and beyond. So you can think about your personal brand when you're interacting with people and completing your work. Am I behaving in a way that's consistent with this brand I'm establishing for myself? When you're interviewing for jobs, you can prepare your elevator pitch in a way that communicates your personal brand. You can also brainstorm stories from your work experience that align with your personal brand to help further cement that brand as who you are and what you would bring to their organization. You can also find sample projects that you've completed that illustrate your personal brand in action. We also want to emphasize our personal brand in our introductions. When I'm giving a research presentation, I say, my name is Bailey Benedict. I'm a social scientist who blah, 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 and I put in some elements of my personal brand. Finally, we can include our personal brand in our offline presence too, so we can make sure the language on our resume reflects our personal brand. And there are even visual cues that we can give folks on our resume to signal what our personal brand might be. Same with our cover letter. We want to make an argument that this personal brand will contribute meaningfully to their organization. And finally, we can reflect our personal brand onto our business cards. You might be thinking, but hey, what about that whole online sphere? We can do the exact same thing in our online presence as well. So on LinkedIn, we can take that same language from our personal brand that's on our resume and cover letter and put it on our LinkedIn as well. We can put that language in our email signature. When we introduce ourselves to people via email, echo some of those elements of our personal brand. If you have a personal website or portfolio, the personal brand can be there as well. And if you want to, you can bring that personal brand onto other social media platforms like Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever the kids are using these days. So in summary, your personal brand is marketing who you are. Branding can help you be successful at work and in your relationships and can help make you more memorable to people. Your personal brand can include qualities, experiences, skills, knowledge, hobbies, superpowers, accomplishments, stories, passions, values, goals, purposes, and trait nouns. We can also align our personal brand with organizational goals to make an argument for why we would make a contribution to our organization. And we also then want to be consistent and authentic when we're communicating our personal brand online and offline. It's been nice getting to know you so far in class, and I'm eager to see how your personal brand develops over the course of the semester.